Syntax Silk Road meetings in cartography. And we fly eastwards. We fly to Yokohama this time to attend the talk of Masatoshi Honda, who is a professor at the Yokohama College of Commerce. He's a former student of Professor Ando, and he obtained a PhD in linguistics at the University of Tsukuba. His main research is about the syntax of English and the syntax of focus. So today's talk about two different types of focus fronting, and will provide evidence on particle fronting. So Masatoshi, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your nice introduction. First of all, I sincerely appreciate Professor Su Fu-chen and Dr. Joseph Samo for providing me with this great opportunity to talk about my research project and connecting the syntax Silk Road to Yokohama, Japan. I'm also grateful to the audience who joined my presentation. It's my great honor to be here. Okay, today I'd like to talk about two types of focus fronting with reference to particle fronting in German and English. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay. Okay, so let me first explain the outline of this presentation. One of the central issues on the syntax information structure interface is how the notion of focus is grammatically encoded and specified across languages. It has been observed in the literature that certain fronting operations syntactically specify focus, more precisely contrastive focus. Within the cartographic framework, Ritchie 1997 hypothesizes that there is a unique functional projection dedicated to focus in the CP domain, as shown in 1A. In contrast, observing non-contrastive focus fronting phenomena in Romance languages, such as Sicilian, Kruskina 2011 proposes his original split CP hypothesis, according to which the CP domain includes two functional projections for focus: contrastive focus and information focus, CFOC and IFOC. The assumption of the latter focus projection has allowed scholars to examine focus-related phenomena cross-linguistically. For example, Trotsky and Quire 2016 observed that the verb second phenomena with fronted non-contrastive verb particles function to name emotionally evaluated situations in German. They furthermore argue that the relevant type of particle fronting is associated with extremeness in the sense of Moditsky 2011. In connection with this, it is worthwhile considering past particle fronting in English, which is originally described as directional adverb preposing by Emmons 1976. It is a traditional argument that certain root transformations result in emphasis. For example, let us consider the sentences in 3 with directional adverb preposing. 3A, this is a typical example of locative inversion. Down the street rode the baby carriage. 3B, I call this type of locative inversion particle fronting. Up trotted the dog. And also 3C, round and round spins the fateful wheel. According to the previous studies based on transformational grammar, the post-verbal NP in each example receives emphasis or emphatic intonation. In other words, all the examples in 3 have presentational focus on the post-verbal GP. Furthermore, the preposed particle also seems to carry emphasis in some sense. However, at that time, the primary concern was to identify and formulate constraints on grammatical transformations, but the concept of emphasis has been explored in generative grammar by addressing the following 2 general issues. First, what the nature of emphasis is, and second, where it originates from. Therefore, extending Trotsky and Quayer's approach to particle fronting in English, this study aims to explore empirical and theoretical implications for the theory of focus and the nature of emphasis involved. On the empirical side, it demonstrates that certain forms of particle fronting in English function to name emotionally evaluated situations. On the theoretical side, it argues that the relevant focus fronting operation is triggered to satisfy the extreme criterion in the focus layer, which is shown in 7a and 7b. In other words, the fronted XP and the inverted verbal element establish a spec-head agreement relationship in the focus layer by sharing the extreme feature. This presentation is organized as follows. Section 2 introduces Kruskina's 2011 dichotomy of focus fronting as a theoretical background of this study and reviews Trotsky and Quayer's analysis of particle fronting in German. Section 3 provides arguments for the claim that particle fronting in English behaves similarly to that in German. Section 4 draws conclusions and mentions some remaining issues. Okay, let me move on to section 2, 2 types of focus fronting. Starting from the notion of the focus presupposition articulation, I'd like to introduce Kruskina's dichotomy of focus fronting. The notion of the focus presupposition articulation has a long tradition in generative grammar. For example, Jack Enders 1972 defines the notion of focus, as the information in the sentence that is assumed by the speaker not to be shared by him and the hearer. On the other hand, presupposition denotes the information that is assumed by the speaker to be shared by him and the hearer. Furthermore, recent studies have proposed that the notion of focus comes in at least 2 types. One is contrastive focus and the other is IFOC or information focus. According to Kruskina 2011, IFOC indicates that the assertive part of the sentence, which must be interpreted as innovative and most informative in the sense that it contributes new and relevant information to the universe of discourse. On the other hand, CFOC indicates that the assertion corresponds to denying or correcting a previous innovative assertion or presupposition that the speaker does not share. With these definitions in mind, let us consider 9 and 10. 9a, context. What car did John buy? John bought a Ferrari. And 10, your book. You should give to Paul, not mine. In 9, the object DP carries new information focus, satisfying the unknown value of the WH question. In 10, the fronted DP conveys contrastive focus or CFOC and provides a new piece of information which functions to correct the wrong piece of information indicated by the negative tag. By virtue of the corrective function, a sentence with CFOC fronting could not be felicitously used as conveying non-contrastive new information. That's why the WH question answer pair in 11, A and B, what did you buy? This book I bought, not that one, is unacceptable. While the one with the D-linked WH question in 12 is fine. Which book did you buy? This one or that one? This one I bought, not that one. This is fine. Having seen the fundamental distinction between IFOC and CFOC, let us turn to the difference between neutral IFOC and emphatic IFOC. The relevant difference is illustrated in 13 from Sicilian. In 13BA, chi scribisti, what did you write? Scrissi nautico. The post-verbal DP at the object position simply conveys IFOC and functions to satisfy the unknown value of the WH phrase. In 13BB, on the other hand, nautico scrissi, in this case, the fronted IFOC DP serves to satisfy the unknown value of the WH phrase and is always associated with emphasis or the special contextual effects created by the interplay of the new information provided with the old information already available. Kruskina described the emphatic and contextual effects by making reference to relevance theory. This means that emphasis is ascribed to contextual or pragmatic factors or relevance. On the basis of these observations, Kruskina calls the post-verbal IFOC in 13BA neutral IFOC, and the fronted IFOC in 13BB emphatic IFOC. Some scholars also say this is an instance of mirative fronting. One of the defining characteristics of emphatic IFOC or mirative fronting is that it is compatible with sentence focus contexts. This property is indicated by the example in 14. Here, in this event reporting context, the speaker is using the sentence with emphatic IFOC or mirative fronting as a self-answer to the sentence focus WH question, which corresponds to guess what. Since CFOC fronting requires a wrong piece of information in the preceding discourse, it is incompatible with sentence focus. In order to account for the empirical difference in information structure between CFOC fronting and emphatic IFOC fronting, Kruskina 2011 assumes that the CP domain involves two functional projections for focus, CFOC and IFOC, as shown in 15b. The CFOC projection in 15b corresponds to the focus projection in Rich's 1997 original split CP hypothesis in 15a. In this case, CFOC fronting contributes to the bipartite focus presupposition articulation. In contrast, emphatic IFOC fronting targets spec IFOC P and yields syntactic configurations that are compatible with the sentence focus context. This section has introduced the difference between CFOC fronting and emphatic IFOC fronting. To summarize, 16a, the fronted emphatic IFOC conveys a new piece of information, as in the case of WH question-answer pairs, whereas the fronted CFOC does not. B, emphatic IFOC fronting is compatible with the sentence focus or all new statement context, while CFOC fronting is not. In connection with this, let me review Trotsky and Quayer's analysis, Trotsky and Quayer's study on particle fronting in German, who argues that emphatic iFOC fronting is substantiated from certain instances of particle fronting in German. So let me move on to the next slide. It has been argued in the literature that particle fronting phenomena in Germanic languages are subject to certain semantic transparency conditions. For example, Jackend of 2002 argues that particle fronting in English can be applied to those verb particles which show semantic transparency or compositionality. According to his argument, the directional up is part of a non-idiomatic transparent particle verb configuration, and therefore is licit in particle fronting, as shown in 17a. Up matched the sergeant. In contrast, the idiomatic particle up, as in blow up, lacks the directional meaning and hence cannot be fronted, as shown in 17b. Up blew the building. This sentence is out. Furthermore, some previous studies point out that similar restrictions are imposed on particle fronting in German, which is an instance of the verb second phenomena in this language. For example, the fronted of in 18a is transparent for two reasons. First, it can be a predicate in a copular construction as shown in 19a, aufmachen. This auf is a transparent predicate. So die Tür ist auf, the door is open. This sentence is okay. But aufhören, to stop, this auf cannot appear in the predicate position. This means this auf is not a transparent element. And the second, aufmachen has an antonym, so zumachen, which corresponds to to shut. So aufmachen, to open, zumachen means to shut. So which means that auf is contrastive in the sense that it is a member of a set of alternatives, as shown in 20a. The fronted auf in 18b, this one, is not transparent because it cannot be a predicate and it has no antonym. If the predicative and contrastive particle of undergoes fronting, then the particle fronting sentence receives a contrastive reading, as shown in 18a. Excuse me, there are two 18a, but this is actually 18b. And the interpretation is like this: he opened, not closed, the door. We clearly have a contrastive interpretation in the case of 18a. And excuse me, 18b, this should be b, and this sentence is also out. I'm sorry. So the traditional observation is that fronted transparent verb particles are contrastively construed. This is a traditional observation. However, Trotsky and Quayer 2016 further observed that particle fronting can be applied to non-contrastive verb particles under certain conditions. Let us take, for example, the following two predicative and contrastive particle verbs. 22, rausschmeißen, which means kick out in English. And this house is predicative because die Engländer sind Haus. The English team is out, this is fine. And this particle is not contrastive because it has no antonym. So Haus-Schmeisen is okay, but Rein-Schmeisen is not possible. And also we have another instance of non-contrastive particle verb as shown in 23, Hausbringen, which means publish in English. And this house is predicative because you can say das neue Album ist Haus. The new album is out, this is fine. But it has no contrastive alternative expression like bringen is out. However, what's interesting here is these particle verbs appear in particle fronting constructions in German. And the data is showing 24. And in this event reporting context, the speaker is trying to introduce an exclamatory statement sentence with particle fronting after making the sentence focused WH question, which corresponds to guess what. According to Trotsky and Quire 2016, fronting non-contrastable particles basically result in sentence-focused statements that can have the flavor of a sentence exclamation. The examples given here show that particle verbs must entail remarkability components, which make them acceptable in the context that is associated with the interpretation of unexpectedness on the part of the speaker. They observe that the remarkability meaning components come in two flavors. For example, the particle verb Hausschmeißen, kick out, in 24a is an expressive or extreme particle verb in the sense that it functions to name strongly emotionally evaluated situations. For example, it means to get rid of someone or something in a harsh way. While the particle verb Hausbringen, publish, in 24b is a non-expressive particle verb. While Hausschmeißen, kick out, entails that a team has eliminated a competitor in a stunning way, Hausbringen does not denote any such remarkability scale that could serve as the basis for expressing the speaker's evaluation. So what we have is just the binary option, whether the band published something or did not publish their album. According to Trotsky and Quire, there is a possible context in which 24b is not so bad. If a band is known to spend many years in the studio before releasing a new album, the speaker might express her or his surprise about the situation that the publishing process has been completed faster than she or he expected. In this case, the speaker's expectation will be violated on the basis of a likelihood ranking with respect to the speed of publishing of that particular band. In other words, the binary option of publication, either publish or not, is enriched by a degree dimension related to the factor speed. As is clear from this scenario, however, the degree component in question is yielded by the contextual factor, not from the lexical meaning of the particle verb itself. So the new observation is summarized here. Non-contrastive verb particles also allow particle fronting in German. Trotsky and Quire 2016 adopts Mojitsky's 2012 12 extreme degree modification as a diagnostic for identifying the distinction between the explicit particle verb Hausschmeißen, kick out, and the particle verb Hausbringen, publish. For example, extreme adjectives such as gigantic resist additional modification by very. So as shown in 25, your shoes are downright gigantic. This is fine, but you can't say your shoes are downright big. This is strange. And the other verbs in 26 are examples of extreme adverbs. So simply, just, positively, absolutely, flat out. All these adverbs carry extremeness. So Mojitsky argues that these extreme adjectives signal that a degree lies outside a contextually provided range. And also, Mojitsky argues that extremeness exists across syntactic categories. For example, absolute idiot. In this case, idiot carries extremeness. This is a noun, not an adjective. Adopting this extreme degree modification as a test, Trotsky and Quire identify expressive, non-contrastive particle verbs by examining whether a particle verb co-occurs with the extreme degree modifier regelrecht, which corresponds to downright in English. They argue that those particle verbs which allow the co-occurrence with it also naturally license expressive patterns of particle fronting. So if you look at 27a, regelrecht, this corresponds to downright, which is an extreme adverb, and it can modify Hausbringen, Hausgeschmissen. So this corresponds to, downright kick out the English team. But maybe kick out in English is a little bit weak. This combination doesn't carry an extreme meaning. So this kick out should be something like destroy. Then you can say the team of Costa Rica downright destroyed the English team. This is fine. And if you compare 27a with 27b, regelrecht, Hausgebrecht, this downright cannot modify Hausgebrecht, brought, which means publish in English. And also in English, maybe you can't say the band downright published their new album. This sentence is also out in English. So now we have the second new observation, which is extreme particle verbs naturally allow explicit patterns of particle fronting in English. So 27a, the acceptability of 27a is reflected in 24a, and also the unacceptable status of 27b is also reflected in 24b. Yes. And to summarize, the expressive type of particle fronting in German is licensed by applying the particle fronting operation to extreme, non-contrastive verb particles. In order to account for this fact, following Kluskina 2011 and Bianchi-Bossi-Kluskina 2016, Trotsky and Quire proposed that particle fronting targets some focus-related projection in a CP domain, which is shown, which is denoted as ENF-B or emphasis B here. And Trotsky and Quayer's proposal seems to indicate the following two possibilities. First, information-focused fronting is triggered by a grammatical feature which is responsible for extremeness in the sense of Mojitsky 2012. Second, particle fronting phenomena in German languages, including English, can be derived by applying IFOC fronting to extreme particle verbs. Therefore, there are at least two preliminary predictions as shown in 13a and b. So the first prediction is fronted contrastive particle verbs can be construed contrastively. And the second prediction is that fronted non-contrastive extreme particle verbs function to name emotionally evaluated situations. In the next section, I'd like to consider these two predictions. Before proceeding, a word is in order about the difference between particle fronting in German and that in English. The previous section has briefly mentioned that particle fronting in German is an instance of the verb second phenomenon. In this case, particle verbs can be intransitive or transitive, as we have already seen in this example. However, directional adverbial purpose in English is restricted to unaccusative verbs. Throughout this presentation, this unaccusative verb restriction shown here is seen as an independent language-specific factor which affects the grammaticality of particle fronting in English. Okay, so let me move on to the status of the fronted particle in English particle fronting construction. So by examining the grammatical status of the fronted particle and the semantic property of the particle verb, this subsection shows that the fronted particle in particle fronting in English shows the dual status, the subject foot and focal. First, the preposed particle shows the subject foot property. As shown by Capel 2002, the former property, the subject foot, is shown by the example in 32. So, and in 5, 10, or 15 seconds, out will come your answer. So here, out and will. Auxiliary reduction is applied to will in this case. So the point is that the auxiliary will can be contracted and attached to the fronted particle. Therefore, the sentence initial particle behaves as the subject. This will be similar to the status of the fronted locative PP in locative inversion, as argued by Bresnan. Second, the sentence initial particle has a non-contrastive focal property. According to Trotsky and Quayer, expressive patterns of particle fronting are limited to non-contrastive particles. With this point in mind, let us consider the following predicative and non-contrastive unaccusative particle verbs. So please look at examples in 33a and b. The secrets gushed out. And this is transparent in terms of predicative because you can say the secrets were out. And gush out has no antonym, like gush in is out. So it is a non-contrastive verb particle. So the particle out in the particle verb gush out is plus predicative and minus contrastive because the particle functions as a predicate of the subject with the meaning of the secrets are known to the public and does not have any other particle as its alternative while keeping the meaning of the verb. The same is true of the particle out in the particle verb come out. For example, 34A, a new movie came out. This is okay. And you can also say 34B, a new movie was out. This means this out is a predicative one, which also means this out is transparent. And you can say come out, but you can't say come in. This means come out is minus non-contrastive particle verb. One crucial difference between these two particle verbs concerns extremeness. In the case of gush out, the particle verb means that a large number of secrets are unintentionally known to the public quite suddenly. In the case of come out, on the other hand, the option is binary, whether a new movie is published or not. According to my informants, this difference in extreme degree is correlated with whether they co-occur with the extreme degree modifier just, as shown in 35A and 35B. So the secrets just gushed out just can modify gush out, but 35B, a new movie just came out, just cannot modify come out in this case. A similar example can be easily made by replacing just into absolutely. So the secrets absolutely gushed out, absolutely can modify gush out, but a new movie absolutely came out. This sentence is out. This means absolutely can't modify come out. The contrast given here shows that gush out, unlike come out, is an expressive particle verb. In this case, the sentence implies that a large number of secrets that the speaker wants to keep are known to the public so suddenly. Furthermore, my informants reported that the expressive status of the particle verb gush out is indicated by the fact that the extreme degree meaning can be intensified by repeating the particle, as shown in 36A. The secrets gushed out and out. This is fine. But 36B, a new movie came out and out. This is strange. And if you change the subject into new movies came out and out. This is still strange, according to my informants. So the point is that no such intensification pattern is possible in the case of the non-expressive, non-extreme particle verb come out. My informants also reported that the difference in extreme degree connotation between the two particle verbs crucially affects the acceptability of particle fronting in sentence focus contexts. According to my informants, the particle fronting sentence is acceptable as a self-answer to the sentence focus WH question, while the one in 37B, out came a new movie, is marginal in the same event reporting context. Here, the speaker's utterance is interpreted as conveying that she or he is emphasizing that the secrets are known to the public so suddenly. The suddenness value, this corresponds to the extreme connotation. This is ascribed to the lexical meaning of the particle verb gush out. and that value is emphasized by fronting the particle in question to the sentence initial position. Here, on the other hand, the particle verb come out lexically means something is published without any additional extreme degree connotation. For this reason, come out simply provides the binary option, published or be published or not, which can be enriched by certain contextual information indicating that the publication of some movie is delayed for some particular reason, and after a certain period, the movie is finally published. So maybe in this context, you can say, finally out came a new movie. This will be fine. These facts suggest that the acceptability of particle fronting in English depends on the presence of the expressive meaning of a particle verb. Finally, let me quickly think about the set of particles with predicativity and contrastivity. The particle up in the particle verb go up is predicative and contrastive because the particle functions as a predicate of the subject and has the alternative particle down while keeping the verbal meaning unchanged. If the particle up undergoes particle fronting, the resulting sentence requires a contrastive context, as shown in 40. Up went the shares, not down. Okay, so let me summarize the discussion so far. The focal nature of the fronted particle is divided into two types, the one with a contrastive function and the other with extremeness. Let us outline the derivation of particle fronting in English. As far as predicative particle verbs are concerned, the subject and the particle establish a predication relationship. On the theoretical side, it is assumed that this type of predication relation reflects a small clause as proposed by Stowell, 1981. Under this assumption, an accusative verb like gush takes a small clause as its complement, as shown in 42b. Given that the sentence initial particle in particle fronting plays a dual role, the subject foot and non-contrastive or non-contrastive focus, it is assumed that a particle must satisfy both the EPP requirement and the focus fronting requirement. More concretely, after satisfying the EPP requirement at spec IP, the particle is forced to move to spec foc P for some grammatical reason. In connection with this, the present study proposes that the particle at spec IP must front to spec ifoc P due to the thematic resistance principle proposed by Koopman, 1984. And I'll propose that the resulting structure can be 44A or 44B. Now, let me briefly conclude, let me finish my presentation by mentioning two consequences. One is two types of particle fronting in English is observed in this presentation. The one with the contrastive function and the other with extremeness. And this will mean, on the theoretical side, this fact means particle fronting may satisfy either of the following two criteria, the CFOC criterion or the extreme criterion. And finally, I'd like to mention two remaining factors. One is concerned with the emphasis involved in the post-verbal DP in partial particle fronting. So it is often argued that up trotted the dog. This dog carries presentational focus. In this, in my proposal, I have no mechanism to capture this fact. So I'd like to consider this problem in the future research. And the second question is, how can the present proposal be unified into other theoretical approaches to V2 phenomena? For example, criteria approach to the cartography of V2 proposed by Samo. I'd like to consider these two issues in my future research. Thank you for listening, and I hope that all of you stay healthy and safe. That's all.
Thank you so much for your enlightening presentation. That was really interesting, especially the cross-linguistic comparison. So if there are questions, please use or the blue hand or write in the chat, I have a question. Okay, I see there was a hand by Professor Kane, and Professor Rizzi also has a question. Okay, perfect. So Professor Kane and then Professor Rizzi. I just unmute you. Professor, okay, perfect.
Just a couple of remarks. One is that at some point you want to integrate the fact that in English, if the subject is a pronoun as opposed to a lexical DP, you don't get verb inversion. So you get down it went, not down went it. So the two are not necessarily connected. More general remark is that in my English, answering a question with a contrastive focus is not possible.
Oh, really?
If somebody says, who are you planning to invite? I can't reply, John, I'm planning to invite, not Mary. Nor can I answer, I'm planning to invite John, not Mary. Both answers are inappropriate. They improve if you add a but. So I'm planning to invite John, but I'm not planning to invite Mary. I think this is related to a more general question that comes up for everybody, and in particular, in certain cases in cartographic work, to my eye, and thinking of a so-called decompositionality principle that I suggested a number of years ago, many of the labels suggested are, I think, too complex. I think that a label like contrastive focus is not, I mean, I suspect that a label like contrastive focus is actually inadmissible. The language faculty doesn't allow that complex a label, so that we should look in the direction of breaking things down into a notion of contrast and a notion of focus, which may well come together in certain languages in certain cases, but are essentially separate.
Thank you very much. At this moment, I have no, probably I needed to consider more about the status of contrastive focus as a reply to WH questions. And in my informants allow them, but let me consider again the facts themselves.
Thank you, Professor Kane. Thank you, Masatoshi. Professor Rizzi. I need to unmute. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Right. Good. So, in fact, I have another question that I'm going to ask in a moment, but let me first comment on Richie's comment. There was a recent MA thesis at the University of Siena by Stefano Castiglione, where his proposal is exactly what Rich suggested. That is to say, to dissociate the feature contrast from the feature focus, and then have the two features combined. I mean, given the general principle that basically one relevant feature corresponds to one head, that's inevitable, right? So to dissociate properties. But then you can create complex heads syntactically by head movement, or find other ways of, let's say, satisfying two criteria in the sense in which you use them simultaneously, right? One simple possibility is to have head movement, but there are certainly other possibilities to obtain that kind of result. But it's a very important step, which is very much in the spirit of cartographic work, I think. Now, the comment I wanted to make, question I wanted to ask is that if you take something like Kruskina's approach with two focal positions or maybe more, it's very plausible because you can see that there are distinct topic positions, it's very plausible that there will be distinct focal positions. And Rich's question arises, how are these different positions obtained if they involve the association of a focus feature plus some other feature, right? So that there's a question of how exactly you end up with that variety of positions. But what I wanted to say is that what emerges very clearly from Kruskina's work is that you cannot use the two focus positions simultaneously, right? So you either use one or the other. Of course, if you have a single position, that's trivial. You have one position, so, If you have several positions, it's slightly more complex, and you have to deal with, to make assumptions about presumably the interface with logical form to obtain the result that only one focal position is possible. So one simple possibility is to play with the focus presupposition distinction, and so that you could not possibly have a focus in the presuppositional part of another focal element. So that would be one simple possibility, but then you really have to work out the details about how we interpret the different bipartitions that are determined by the different heads, focal heads. So this is one thing. The other thing is that how is the question, how is the criterion satisfied in a language like English? Because it's not so easy, to assume that you have verb movement to the left periphery in English, given that lexical verbs are typically trapped in the lower part of the structure, as Pollock showed many years ago, right? And then there are the examples that Richie referred to, in which pronominal elements can, in fact, pronominal subjects can, in fact, intervene between, for instance, PPs or particles and the rest of the clause, which, I mean, these considerations suggest that maybe the criterial satisfaction is done in a somewhat different way, maybe more than just the verb moves to the left periphery to satisfy the criterion, but a larger verbal chunk maybe moves in that case. So that is kind of complicated to work out, but I think it is plausible that you don't just have a phenomenon like, let's say, German V2, in which it's plausible that the single verbal element moves to the left periphery, given the properties of English. Okay. That was the comment.
Thank you very much.
There are other questions, comments. I can see some, for those who are video, they can raise the hands. For those who do not share the video, they can run. Okay, Professor Biberauer, I can, okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on, well, actually these comments about English. and that we do need to take into account, of course, that it's not a V2 system, maybe a residual V2 system. But I think there are some phenomena in English that might be very interesting to you. That I don't think they've been discussed a great deal, but I can think of one paper that I can send you that has relevant information, and this picks up on the work that you, I mean, the discussion, the part of your discussion that was concerned with the sort of the extreme fronting type thing, because in some varieties of English, at least, people are allowed to have what I've in past work called exclamative V2. It's a sort of, if you say something like, man, is that annoying, for example, right? And that has interesting properties too, because it's in some, I mean, it's clearly you need a degree predicate and so on in the main section. But what's interesting about it is that I'm not quite sure if there's been any work on contrasting the V2 version of that when you say, man, is that annoying, or when you don't do the V2, right? So when you say, man, it's annoying, right? I mean, I think there are definitely differences there. But I think that is an interesting case where you can see, you could potentially probe a little bit what the significance is of the residual verb second property and this extreme interpretation, and exactly what this extreme interpretation is. I can send you, there's a very nice paper which sort of highlights some of the properties of this man construction. But essentially you can put any sort of expletive kind of element in the first position, and you get and certainly with the verb second interpretation, verb second structure, you need to get an extreme degree interpretation as part of it. So that seems to me very relevant to the German structure as well. It's just more restricted in the English.
Thank you very much. I've never thought of that possibility, man construction. So I know that usually WH exclamatives in English also carry extremeness, but basically the propositional content is presupposed. But at this moment, I have no idea about the information structure status of man construction. So let me think about it. Thank you very much. McLady. Yeah. What man does it?
Thank you so much for the question, Professor Biberauer. If there are other questions or comments, we have still some minutes before we can. If not, I would like to make a comment, since if it's possible. Thank you so much for the presentation, and I wanted to ask you some data concerning, because, for example, the English V2 or Ritzi V2, in the sense of the residual V2, always implies auxiliaries, the case of the do support. So did you find the cases in which you have something like away do we go, or something like this?
I'm sorry, could you be more specific on that? No, I'm not so familiar.
I don't know, because I'm just creating the example right now. So I was just probably suggest, because in the criteria V2, the part that moves is essentially the auxiliary, like if there is an auxiliary, there is an auxiliary. So it moves, the auxiliary moves. If not, it's the lexical entry, but it is, let's say, the highest head moves in that case. So, but English shows a residual V2 pattern, and when it does with auxiliaries, with a do support. So that's why I wanted to ask you whether you observed the elements with the do support, or just with the lexical verbs.
Do support in the context of particle fronting, you mean? Okay. At this moment, I have no answer to your question, but in certain limited cases, I think locative inversion allow do, the occurrence of do, but I have to think carefully about the status of that do.
Okay, thank you so much. If I see if there are other comments or questions or follow-up. If not, let me know. Just say 1 second like this. If not, I just remind you that we have a YouTube channel that you could rewatch this. You could rewatch this conference and the other webinars. We have a WeChat platform, the Theoretical Linguistics Wudako station, in which you can rewatch the webinars. And the next week we will fly from Yokohama to Cambridge with all the restrictions, like following all the good restriction, and we will fly to Cambridge to attend Caterina Bonan talk about WH in situ in Asia and in Veneto. So totally syntax synchrode related. Have a beautiful day. I would like to thank again Professor Masatoshi Honda and Professor Kane, Professor Rizzi, and Professor Biberauer for attending this talk, and again Professor Sifujian for making this talk possible. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.